Hello, my name is Steve Nelly. I'm with the Hill Country Land Trust. We're a nonprofit organization whose purpose is to provide long-term protection and conservation of the Texas Hill Country. The things that are special about the Hill Country, the open spaces, the farms and ranches, the wildlife habitat, the watersheds, the creeks and rivers, and just the scenic beauty. Many landowners want to ensure that those values are protected and maintained forever. So we work with private landowners on a voluntary basis to help them customize a conservation easement which will protect and maintain those values forever and ever. We're going to be looking at one of the significant land management issues in the Hill Country, and that is prickly pear infestations. And how can a landowner thin out and manage and control thick infestations of prickly pear cactus? Prickly pear is a native plant, and it's actually a good plant in moderation. It can protect some of the good grasses from heavy grazing, so it has some natural benefits. And the objective is not to eradicate it, but simply to manage it so that landowners can enjoy their land better and some of the desirable plants can spread. There are 5 different herbicides that are approved and effective on prickly pear. And our purpose is not to recommend one particular herbicide over another, but to tell people that they have several options of safe and effective herbicides that can be used to treat prickly pear. We're not saying that herbicides are the best way or the only way, but they're one way that many landowners choose. And later on, we'll look at some mechanical efforts to try to deal with prickly pear. This is the Bible of weed and brush control in Texas. It's a publication by the Texas AgriLife Extension. It's called RM 1466, and so if you're contemplating doing any herbicide work, this is the Bible, this is the document that you need to refer to, because everything in here is approved, it's labeled, and it's safe, and it's effective if you follow the directions. Here we are on a ranch in western Llano County. The landowner has chosen to try to control some of this prickly pear with a relatively new herbicide product that has proven to be effective on prickly pear. The name of this herbicide, the trade name is Pasture Guard, and it's a mixture of fluroxapyr and triclopyr. And what we see right here, it's completely 100% dead after 1 year. So it's a relatively fast-acting herbicide. It doesn't take a long period to kill the plant. This one was sprayed just 6 weeks ago, and you can clearly see how sick and yellowing it's getting. Within another couple of months, it's going to be dead. And using herbicides such as Pasture Guard that have no residual soil activity, they completely biodegrade in a very short time. So it's a safe herbicide that's not going to impact other vegetation, except temporarily. We're on a ranch in eastern Llano County. This surmount that was sprayed here back in August is a slow-acting herbicide. You can see that the pads are yellowing, some are turning brown, some are still green, and that's consistent with the slow activity of this herbicide surmount. It's going to take a year and a half, sometimes perhaps even 2 years for these plants to completely die. This little clump right here of 2 pads is dead. It's completely dead. So it's a slow death, but it looks like it's going to do a pretty good job. This surmount, it's a combination of fluroxapyr and picloram, and that's important that you know the active ingredient in these herbicides. Picloram is a herbicide that stays active in the soil for 2 to 3 years after application. These herbicides are specific toward broadleaf plants. They don't kill grasses, but you are going to injure or kill the broadleaf plants. And if you have a product that stays active in the soil for 2 to 3 years, you're going to have some residual activity, and you can possibly have some damage on non-target species such as wildflowers, forbs, shrubs, vines, and even trees. More and more people now are a little bit more reluctant to use the products with picloram because of that residual soil activity. There are other products that don't have that residual activity. Vista is a herbicide. The active ingredient is fluroxypear. There's no residual activity with fluroxypear. We're here in northern Mason County today on the Side Oats Ranch. And like many hill country ranches, this ranch had become infested with dense prickly pear over much of the ranch. So the goal here has not been to eliminate prickly pear, but to open it up considerably. And so they have found a mechanical method to rake up prickly pear and to stack it in a location, and we're going to see how effective that has been. This is the piece of equipment that makes all this possible. This is a rock rake made by a company called MDS. This is an example of the kind of creativity that Texas land stewards use to try to find solutions, perhaps non-traditional solutions, to their land conservation. There's some fragments that have been left behind. Those pads most of them will reroot if they're left on the ground. So the secondary follow-up is a person comes behind and rakes these up into a pile, and the tractor will then come back later and pick up what has been left behind. And then here's a perfect location to come back with a small bit of raking and dribble some seed, side oats grama, green sprangle top, little blue stem, and some forbs and wildflowers to try to enhance plant diversity. You'll also notice that he intentionally left some clumps of prickly pear. That was an intentional decision to leave certain clumps intact because they want a certain density of prickly pear. And so really the smaller the tractor, the better for this type work. You do less damage and you're able to get in and maneuver, and it doesn't cost a fortune to operate. The area I'm standing now looked just like the area we just looked at. It was dense prickly pear, too thick to really walk comfortably through. They came through here with the tractor and the rake 7 years ago, and you can see that it's pretty clean. It's got just the right amount of prickly pear for what they want. This area right in front of where I'm standing was a large area of prickly pear just a month ago, but you can see that the amount of ground disturbance is only fairly modest. You can also see there's some desirable plants that had been hiding in this prickly pear clump. And of course we realize, and the ranchers have verified, that it's not a one-time project. You don't go and treat prickly pear one time and you're done with it. It's a continual process. So here we are on another ranch that has thick prickly pear infestations. As you can see, it's plenty thick. It's too thick really to be able to enjoy the ranch. And what has been done here is a skid steer loader with a bucket on the front. Put the bucket right on the ground or perhaps an inch under the ground. Undercutting those roots, you get a bucket full of prickly pear, and then you dump it into a pile. The problem with that approach, if you have a bucket on a front end loader, is you're losing 2 to 4 inches of soil. Here's a pretty good sized pile of prickly pear, but there's a lot of soil mixed in with it. That pile of soil is going to be there for a long, long time unless the rancher comes with a small dozer and spreads it back out. But right now we just want that prickly pear to die. And some of the pads fell off, and now the bottom side is rerooting. It would make a new plant if I hadn't have uprooted it. But that's the danger of doing anything mechanical with prickly pear. The danger is every pad that falls off of the pile or that you don't get into this pile has the potential to root into a new plant. It looks like 1 to 2 inches of soil was scraped off of here. Now you can see the plants are coming back, but it's going to take a while for these areas to recover with grass. You can reseed these areas. You can do a grassland restoration project because now you've got an area that would be pretty conducive to growing new plants. This is going to cover naturally. It's just going to take a little while. And so there's always going to be maintenance with whatever kind of brush control you do, whether it's chemical or mechanical. It's not a one-time job. The first time you do it, you hope to get a good kill, but you're going to have to come back 2 years later, 5 years later, 10 years later, and do a mop-up or do some maintenance. Think of brush control as being a lifelong process. It's not a project. You're always going to be doing brush control. And really, it's the job of a land steward to have a vision and try to carry out those practices and techniques and methods that'll help your ranch become what you want it to be. And that's really the essence of land stewardship, and that's what we promote and advocate in the Hill Country Land Trust, is to try to help landowners. We help them, we try to encourage them and inspire them to have these dreams and visions of what they want their ranch to be, and then we're more than happy to help with our experience and expertise, and we're just delighted to be able to share the things we've learned and our experience with other landowners.